Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show. One of the questions I get quite a bit in my practice from small business owners is, Ralph, what are some things that I can be doing now that March has come around or we're getting closer to the end of tax season, so I can be prepared? And these real things go for both the current year and for the next tax year. And there was an article that ran in Inc.com in their Inc. magazine, but the online version, and it was written by Alex Chris. And according to what I see here, it was ran about the beginning of March. And one of the things that Alex talks about in here is the 5 things that small business owners must do before April 17th. And I've really found this to be a very, very good way of dealing with things. And I thought it was very useful. And some of the people he interviewed for this are actually pro advisors from the Intuit QuickBooks community. So I would take these things and I would use these things. Number one thing he mentions is keep your records up to date. And I tell you, this is something that can't be stressed enough. Record keeping is the single most critical part of tax preparations. The thing that makes clients successful and unsuccessful when it comes to their tax returns is how well they've kept track of their records. And that means not just doing it at the end of the year. And I will tell you, having been in practice for a very long time now, the clients that I see who keep track of their stuff on a weekly or monthly basis are definitely more organized. Now, one of the best ways to do that is use accounting software. We recommend in our practice QuickBooks Online. And another thing that we recommend with that is a thing called the bank feeds, where it actually feeds the transactions into QuickBooks so that you can go back and, categorize those. And I've really been working with clients this year to try to get them to take a look and use this because it's not expensive. And this way, they can keep track of things as they go. I just had a meeting with a client yesterday and I was going through their books and, they brought in the old shoebox approach of here's what I got. And I start looking through receipts and I said, well, what was this receipt for? Well, Ralph, that was last January. How am I supposed to know? Well, guess what? If you don't know, I certainly don't know. So that's why I say this is really an excellent idea. Keep your records up to date. Look at your bank statements, your bank receipts, credit card statements, anything that you're using to spend money for the business or collect money from the business should be put together. And quite frankly, if you're not doing that on a monthly basis, do you really know how your business is doing? Second thing is look for a preparer with small business savvy. One of the things that cracks me up is when I get a new business client, and it might be a small business client, and they've said, I've always gone to, this person named Sally, she does taxes out of her basement or something like that. And the problem is, Sally might be great for doing an individual tax return that's very simple. Maybe you've got a couple W-2 forms, maybe some interest income and some mortgage interest. But by the time you get into taxes for a business, it gets much more complicated. And, if you decide to go with an expert, find somebody that's got small business, expertise. Not all accountants and not all taxpayers have small business expertise. Look for someone that understands the different types of business entities, such as an LLC, S Corp, or C Corp, because it's not as simple as just putting the numbers on the paper. It's understanding what is the best structure for you to take on and make sure you're doing the things right to reduce your tax burden. No one wants to pay more taxes than what they have to pay. So if you get a person that is well skilled and small business savvy, you will find that that person will be able to give you good advice to try to reduce your taxes. One of the things that I work with clients a lot of times is if they're just doing a Schedule C, like a typical small business that's reported on their personal income tax return. One of the pitfalls of that is that any income that you make, and I'm talking about net income, after expenses, is subject to not only federal, state, but self-employment tax. And that comes as a big shock to people. That's an additional 15.8% tax. And there's ways to reduce that, but you've got to work with somebody like myself or another, an accountant who can help you with that, who specializes in small business. The next thing you talk about here is stay in touch with your preparer throughout the year. And this is something that I can't stress enough. A lot of my clients in my practice are what we call monthly fixed fee clients. And what that means is that they agree to a basket of services that we render to them on a monthly basis. A lot of times that would be, we use QuickBooks Online. We feed in their bank statements. we do a monthly bank reconciliation to see what's going on in their accounts. We do monthly financial statements. And then the other thing I always say to clients, sit down with us, even if it's a phone call or Skype or some sort of FaceTime call, at least once a quarter, but really once a month, and talk about what's going on. I tell clients this all the time. It's much easier for me to help them when they're getting ready to make a decision than after the fact. When a client comes to me on March 13th and the business deadline is March 15th, it's really difficult for us to make any, modifications that will help them. Now, that's not to say we can't do a great job putting the tax return together, but it's more of a historical data at that point. What people need to understand is, if you stay in touch with your accountant throughout the year, then you maintain an open line of communication with them, and you can talk about making big decisions and how that will impact their business. Another thing in this article mentions, don't forget about quarterly taxes. And I have a lot of clients that miss this. Most businesses, small businesses, are required to pay estimated taxes each quarter since they're not taking a W-2. Now, I have a lot of clients that say, you know what, I don't care, I'll just pay it at the end. But then they get sticker shock when I tell them, okay, that's fine, but you're going to pay a penalty for that. They say, what do you mean I'm going to pay a penalty? I said, well, yeah, absolutely. If you don't pay your taxes, in quarterly installments, the IRS will charge you a penalty. Now, there's a lot of ways to get around that. One of which is, actually set up like an S corporation and take a W-2 salary for yourself, or maybe set up an LLC and make quarterly estimates. But this all comes down to, having an idea of what's going on, which goes along with keeping your records up to date. You're looking for a small business preparer and staying in touch with that person throughout the year that should be able to guide them into, paying quarterly taxes. That's one of the things that we do in our practice. We're going to look at your financial statements. We're going to look at that income statement, and say, okay, well, where are we at this year? A lot of times, I'll say to my client, okay, well, if we did your tax returns today, here's what it would look like, which leads me right into the final thing they talk about here, and it's calculating your taxes in advance. What gets measurable gets done, and what's get measured gets done. And that's the truth. If you know where you're going to be, I hate to see a client that comes in and I have to drop that bomb on them that they owe $10,000 in federal tax or $12,000 in federal tax, because most of the time I know they're not expecting that, and it doesn't have to be that way. If they worked with an accountant like myself throughout the year and kept track of their records and planned for these things, then we can figure out ways to reduce that tax burden. But you got to calculate that in advance. This is one of the things that I pride myself in my practice is, we work with our clients throughout the year. So by the time that, August is coming, we're taking a look at, okay, what are we looking at for the fall? We're looking at September, then we're making a decision, have we paid enough in estimated taxes? Then October rolls around and we're thinking about, okay, what can we spend here at the end of the year to get that expense in the current year? And then by the time we're in November and December, we're making sure that we've got all of our things in order. We make sure we've got all of our records together for any assets that were purchased throughout the year, that we've got all of our deductions set up, and then we're really taking a look at, what are some things we can do at year end to try to mitigate that tax cost. And by the time that we reach the 1st of January, besides doing a few reconciliations, if you're really doing a good job of being a small business owner, you should already know where your taxes are going to be, and you've already either set aside that money or you've made quarterly estimates to make sure that money is in place. So these are great ideas of 5 small things some business owners should do before April 17th.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware, and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.